Let's go now to the Democratic Alliance. They will invoke the Promotion of Access to Information Act to compel President Cyril Ramaphosa to release the Digital Vibes report. The presidency received the final report from the SIU on an investigation into a contract between the Department of Health and Digital Vibes earlier this month. Joining me now is leader of the Democratic Alliance, Mr. John Steenhuisen. A very good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for your time today. Perhaps before we go into the issues of the SIU and PAIA, just your comments on the 1.5% wage agreement that has been reached, even though it is temporary.
Yeah, well, I think that it's welcome. I think we've had enough unrest in South Africa over the course of the last fortnight. I don't think we need any more. I don't think our economy could take much more. So I think it's a welcome reprieve. I think we're not out of the woods yet, but I certainly think there's some progress that's been made, and that's a good thing. We really need to settle things down in South Africa so that we can get the country moving and moving forward in the right direction. And I think this is a step in the right direction.
How confident are you that the bargaining council as well as the unions will find themselves on equal footing and will come to an agreement that is more permanent?
Well, I hope they do so, and I hope they do so soon, because the country is in a very, very difficult place. We're facing a hydra of crises, an economic crisis, an unemployment crisis, a pandemic crisis, and now a social unrest crisis. And I really do think that the country's got to come together. We've got to start finding common ground on key issues and starting to address those deep underlying issues that remain unresolved in our economy 2 decades on from democracy. I think, if anything, the last fortnight shows us that there's still huge dispossession, there's still massive poverty, and you have a huge unemployment problem, and all of this feeds into greater problems. And if we don't start addressing this poverty, this unemployment, and this unrest in South Africa, that the whole social compact can come apart at the seams. And the scenes we saw play out in Durban and in Gauteng and in other parts of the country are going to spread like wildfire, and no army or police service will ever be able to contain that. So we've got to work together to find each other and avoid these terrible scenarios from playing out. So anywhere where we're able to sit around a table and come to some agreement, I think is positive. Dialogue is better than violence. Agreement is better than taking to the streets and damaging an already fragile economy. So I think we've got to keep moving and keep working in this direction.
Let's turn now, Mr. Steenhuisen, to another issue at hand. On the 1st of July, President Cyril Ramaphosa received the report from the SIU on the investigation that they did between the Department of Health and Digital Vibes. The President said that he would review the document and then get back to the public on the contents as well as the way forward. That hasn't yet happened. Why do you believe it's important for South Africans to know the content of that report, and why are you, as the DA, pursuing that move?
Well, I think it's important because we've got to have democratic accountability in the country. It's no use saying that we've got to hold people accountable, and then when there are reports and findings are made, that we don't then hold them accountable. I think it's unfathomable that the President's sitting for almost 3 weeks now with that report. We're in the midst of the biggest health crisis, as he himself said on Sunday night, and we've got an acting health minister. This isn't good enough. I think that the report itself is starting to leak. We've seen sections of it appearing in various media around the country, and that in itself is damaging to both Mr. Mkhize and to the President. I think that the report should be made public, and the President's consequence for the findings of that report need to be made. And given the portions that have leaked, I don't think Mr. Mkhize's position is tenable anymore. I don't think that he can, with authority, do what needs to be done in the position as health minister. And I think that the sooner the President moves him along and appoints somebody permanently in that position, we're going to retain this limbo and uncertainty. And I don't think it's healthy in the midst of a pandemic to have that uncertainty raging.
And what are the measures that you, as the Democratic Alliance, are going to be putting in place to try and compel the President to release this information?
Well, we're obviously going to go the route of the Promotion of Access to Information Act. We believe it's fundamentally in the public interest to know whether the health minister, in the midst of a pandemic, had his fingers in the till, and whether he was channeling contracts to friends and family, when his full attention should have been focused on vaccine procurement and on ensuring that we saved lives and that we saved livelihoods. Was he being distracted by material benefits for close associates and family members. I think this is fundamentally in the public interest, and I think that the public have a right to know these things. We elect politicians, we hold them accountable, and where there's credit, it gets given, but also where there are consequences, it must too be felt. And I think that there's been a lack of consequences here. And the longer it drags on, the weaker it makes the president look, and the greater the uncertainty for South Africa. And the last thing we need right now is uncertainty. We're in a very tight spot as a country, and we've got to have that certainty. It's going to guide the way forward. And it's the same, I'm afraid, with the security cluster, and it's why we've also made calls around that. There has to be democratic accountability when things go wrong in South Africa.
And who are you submitting the PAEA applications to?
Well, we'll submit them to the Presidency in both regards. The President is sitting with the SIU report. As I said, we believe it's fundamentally in the interests of the country to know that. And we're also, as you know, paying the security cluster's intelligence report. We have on one hand the State Security Minister saying they produced reports, they provided them to the police. The police minister saying that he never received the reports. Now, to my mind, the best way to resolve this is to find the reports. Let's see them. Let's have a look at them. The threat has passed. The violence has taken place already. We can't go and put that toothpaste back in the tube. But what we can do is to make sure who is telling the truth and who is not. And I think it is important in the final analysis to be able to understand who knew what, when they knew it, and what they did about it, and to see where the chain of command and where the intelligence has broken down, because we were badly let down and people lost their lives and billions of rands worth of damage have been done to the economy, and somebody's got to be held accountable for that. And it's not good enough that nobody is. You
said, Mr. Steenhuisen, that the damage has already been done, everything has passed, but is it really, if indeed there is some very sensitive intelligence information contained in those reports and the threat has actually not passed, if that is indeed the case, what then?
Well, obviously, if that is the case, then obviously sections of that report can be redacted. But I think the big thing to know is to know who knew what, when they knew it, and what they did about it. And this is also, we wouldn't be in this position if we had a proper oversight mechanism of the security services in South Africa. It has been a cloak and dagger operation for far too long. We have one of the most unregulated, unsupervised state security apparatus in the world, even in bigger democracies where you have huge organizations like the CIA and the FBI. They're far more accountable to their legislatures than our security services. And I think that's why we're sitting with the problem that we do today, where you have these rogue elements that have infiltrated them, and why the country is not being served by them, and why they're more intent on servicing personalities within the governing party than on serving the national interest of the country. And I think we've got to change that. So if there's a section of the report that need to be redacted and there's security issues, there's no problem there. But surely the sections of the report, as the minister said, that highlighted that there was going to be looting of shops, that there was going to be violence, those sections of the report can be made available. And we can see for ourselves, as you in the media, us as the opposition, but also the general public in South Africa, the citizens, who are the biggest stakeholders.
So let's say, Mr. Steenhuisen, the report you received, the intelligence report, and you are able then to track the chain of communication. To what end? What would then be the next way forward for the DA?
Well, we'll be able to see then who is actually responsible, because at the moment you've got the ball being tossed between Ministers Dlodlo, Minister Tele and Minister Mapisa and Nakula, and none of those ministers want to take responsibility for what has gone on. There has to be consequence. So one or some of those ministers are going to have to be sacked by the president as a clear sign that that there is accountability in his cabinet for when things go wrong. That it's not just about getting the bouquets when things go right, but there's also accountability when things go wrong. And my impression, and certainly my interactions, I very clearly get the impression the president was badly advised. He wasn't given all the information. And it was let down by a security cluster, which led to making that comment on the Sunday night that this was sporadic and ethnic, when we all know that it was neither sporadic nor ethnic. It was widespread, and it traversed a variety of provinces. So I think he's been badly let down, and I think the president needs to stamp his authority again in his own cabinet and put people into those positions who are going to be able to advise him properly and make sure that he has the information at his disposal to make the right decisions for deployments and for protecting the security of the citizens of the Republic of South Africa.
And when do you hope to make these submissions, and when are you hoping for a response? What are your turnaround times?
Well, it depends how the government reacts to the PIA. Obviously, I imagine, given the acting minister and the presidency's comments, that it's not in the public interest to know what was in these intelligence reports, which I find unfathomable. There's no information that should be kept from citizens in a democracy or a constitutional democracy. Certainly, I imagine the presidency is going to put up a fight and not want to release it. I think there's going to be political pressure not to release it because one or a variety or a combination of those ministers is going to end up, having been caught out, and that's going to leave them in an untenable position. So I think that there's going to be a fight for this information, but we won't yield. Just like we didn't yield for 10 years to get the spy tapes from the Zuma matter, we will continue. That's our job as the opposition, is to hold government accountable. And if Parliament doesn't want to do it, then as the official opposition, we've got to do it. We've got to bring that level of accountability.
Mr. John Steenhuisen, we thank you very much for your time. That's the leader of the Democratic Alliance.